Om Jnanatirmirandasya Dhyananjana Shalakaya Chaksurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna
Jai Om Vishnupad Puramansa Pariprajaka Stotra Sri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Raj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Sri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kunikiti Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Tham Ki Jai. Navadip Tham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Welcome everyone to our Thursday night Istagosthi, and we're on September 9th, 2021. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Miditam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mahyam Datati Shapadantikam. Bandehang Shri Guru Shri Jatapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Shagrashatam Sahagana Raganatan Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lolita Sri Vishakhan Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Prishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Horipriye Vanchakolpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindho Pyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adigaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Welcome again. And this is our time for whatever topics we have in mind. And I wonder what topics you might have in mind.
I have a question.
Yes.
I would like to know what other devotees' favorite shlokas or mantras are.
Mm.
And why?
Any volunteers?
I'll go second.
You might as well go first.
I'm not ready to go first. But if you give me a moment, then I can go first. So, all right, I'll tell mine. It's not my favorite, but it's one of my favorites. And I like it for an interesting reason. So it's from the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And it's actually the first 4 verses. Supreme Personality of Godhead said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. The branches of this tree extend downward and upward, nourished by the 3 modes of material nature. The twigs are the objects of the senses. The tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to the fruit of actions of human society. The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world, No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down this strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom everything began and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial. And I'm sorry I didn't read that very nicely. I was kind of rushing through it, but we all know it. About 8 years ago, anyways, I'm adopted, and I didn't find out I was adopted until I was 50, although I had my suspicions. And at one time, there was a woman who's been in my life since I was a baby, and she was the wife of my mother's son from her first marriage. And I kind of, after some many years, I kind of thought that perhaps she was my birth mother, because back in the old days, before women would get abortions, young women would get pregnant, and their mothers or mothers-in-laws would raise the children as their own, and the birth mother would pass as the older sister or something like that. So I thought maybe this woman was my birth mother. So I went to visit her, and I asked her, and she said, "No, I'm not your mother." And I said, "Well, who is?" She says, "I don't know." And so I was kind of, stuck in no man's land, thinking not only am I adopted, but I have absolutely no clue who my birth family is, after thinking it was this other woman all these years. And within a couple of days after getting, talking to this woman, I was back at home, and Nanda Priya Devi, her parents' names have flown out of my head, but she lives in Mayapur, and she's married to, if not the head pujari, one of the chief pujaris there. She sent me this verse, and maybe I told her I liked it, maybe not, but she just sent it to me. And it seems so appropriate at this time, that to have this, what is it? You don't know how does it go? No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. And that's how I was feeling in my life, that I didn't know what my foundation was, where I came from, and the only solution is to just cut it off, And so I've always found it a very beautiful and evocative verse too, but it has a special relevance for my life. And so I went first, and I went on at length, so I would look forward to hearing from others.
Let's see, am I muted? I don't know. No.
Nope.
Okay, mine is Swasti Astu Vishwasya Kala Prasiddhitam Dayantu Bhutani Shivam Mitodya Manascha Badram Bhajatala Hokshaje Aveshitam No Matira Prahaituki. And it is spoken by Prahlad Maharaj, but it is spoken in the 5th canto, 18th chapter, 9th verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it means, may there be all good fortune throughout the universe. May all envious persons be pacified. May all living entities become calm by practicing bhakti yoga. For by accepting devotional service, they will think of each other's welfare. Therefore, let us all engage in the welfare of the Supreme Transcendence, Lord Sri Krishna, and always remain absorbed in thought of him. And that's my favorite verse, because it's my sincere wish. And when I see the suffering in the world and the hate that abounds in the news and on the internet and everywhere, I feel this prayer is very appropriate.
Nice. Thank you. Other volunteers?
I'll volunteer one. This is from the prayers given by Satyavrata to Matsya Dev. And the Sanskrit is Tvam Tvam Aham Deva Varam Varenyam Prapadya Isham Pratibodhanaya Chindhyartha Deepayar Bhagavan. I was just trying to look it up, so I made sure I get it. Of course, I forget it when I'm saying it in public. The essence is that, O Supreme Lord, for self-realization, I surrender unto you, who are worshipped by all the demigods as the supreme controller of everything. by your instructions exposing life's purpose, kindly cut the knot from the core of my heart and let me know the destination of my life. When I was reading that, sometimes I read prayers in the Bhagavatam, and for whatever reason, they might not be apparently as exciting at the time as the action accompanying the prayers. But this one particularly struck me because it is just a nice prayer for daily guidance and protection. So I somehow remembered that, except that I'm forgetting it now. Something in the chat box from Surabhi Kunja.
Today I shall certainly see him, the goal and spiritual master of the great souls. Seeing him brings jubilation to all who have eyes, for he is the true beauty of the universe. Indeed, his personal form is the shelter desired by the goddess of fortune. Now all the dawns of my life have become auspicious. Akrura's prayers when arriving in Vrindavan, because that is what I meditate on when seeing the deity. Nice.
That line, now all the dawns of my life have become auspicious, is very beautiful. Very poetic.
Yeah, I have one.
Yes.
And this is kind of following along with Apurva's. I really wasn't in on the discussion about if one commits offenses, and this is text 930. Actually, my favorite is 929, but 930 is also good. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he's to be considered saintly because he's properly situated in his determination. And he had, a couple of big words like abominable, Lord being situated within his heart purifies him and excuses him from that abomination. It's so strong that such an occasional fall down is at once rectified. Okay, so that, and I can relate to this because I came to Krishna consciousness and I left Krishna consciousness. I, basically stopped all association with devotees for many, many years. And I will go back and say that I would like to, relive my life like I did before, although I made substantial amounts of money and had everything materially acquirable, but I didn't have Krishna consciousness. And now that I'm back, when I was in Barcelona, I came to a realization that after being at the temple there, I wanted Krishna consciousness again, and that was it. Is the desire, and things have happened, that were somewhat divorces and new wife, and in the process I asked Lord Krishna. I said, Lord, please send me a Vaishnava wife, and I actually kept a journal and I wrote it down. And sure enough, a few months later, I met someone who was also in a similar situation, going through a divorce and so on. And we have both, gone on this journey of being Krishna conscious, and it's so wonderful. I know being a sannyasi or in a celibate situation, there's advantages to that, but being in married life in Krishna consciousness is also nice. But we can look at our life, past life, and say, well, that's I won't call it abominable, but it wasn't the ideal spiritual life. But in any case, a devotee should not be derided. And in our experience, we've had many of our God brothers, fall down, from, very high positions, and some of them have come back and are engaged in Krishna's in the service of the Lord. So one should be careful not to basically judge and criticize others. Okay, that's all. My wife has something to read.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj, Hare Krishna, devotees. So one of my favorite texts so far is from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 24, Text 20. Sa sumadram upavistirnam apasyan sumahatsaraha mahan manaiva svacham rasana shalila shayam. And so it means, translation by Srila Prabhupada, while traveling, the Prachetas happened to see a great reservoir of water, which seemed almost as big as the ocean. The water of this lake was so calm and quiet that it seemed like the mind of a great soul, and its inhabitants, the aquatics, appeared very peaceful and happy to be under the protection of such a watery reservoir. So this watery abode is where Lord Shiva comes out and appears to the Prachetas who had left home to practice austerity to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the master of all austerity. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, one can find many great souls amongst yogis and jnanis, but a truly great soul, a pure devotee of the Lord, who is fully surrendered to the Lord, is very rarely found. Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha, Bhagavad Gita 7:19. A devotee's mind is always calm, quiet, and desireless because he is always anya bilashitas shunyam, having no desire other than to serve Krishna as his personal servant, friend, father, mother, or conjugal lover. Due to his association with Krishna, a devotee is always very calm and cool. It is also significant that within that reservoir, all the aquatics were also very calm and quiet. Because the disciples of a devotee have taken shelter of a great soul, they become very calm and quiet and are not agitated by the waves of the material world. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Nice, thank you.
I'm always attracted to the Brahma Samhita verses in the Chintamani prayers. I chant them for my deities in the morning, and every one of them is so wonderful, starting off with a rather vivid description of the personality of God, his personal form, and then his all-powerful, all-encompassing attributes, then the various servants of the Lord and demigods, and the nature of the Mitra energy, Maya. And I mean, it's just a wonderful meditation. And I like that Lord Brahma finishes by a description of the spiritual world itself, which is really interesting because it adds that it makes you understand that Krishna's abode is not different from him. And anyway, it's just really beautiful. That Shri Akanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpa Tarava prayer is just so wonderful. Hare Krishna. I mean, I could recite it, but anyway, I like those prayers very much.
We're reviewing people's favorite prayers. Anyone else like to suggest something or disclose, share? That's the share something.
How about you, Maharaj?
Well, I have lots of verses I like. You might suspect Namam Druskrita Namudha or Tanaham Vishwata Kruran Sanksaresha Radhaman. There's lots of good verses along those lines. There's some verses that I don't remember the Sanskrit of, but which whenever I hear them, I think they're so lovely. And here's the Sanskrit and translation from, reading off the screen. This is Nanda Maharaj. He's the bidding farewell to Uddhava, who's been visiting Vrindavan. And Nanda Maharaj says, Manaso Vritayo Nasyu Krishna Padam Bujashrayaha Vacho Bidhayanir Nam Nam Kayas Tat Pravanadishu. May our minds be attached to the lotus feet of your Lord Krishna. May our tongues chant his holy names, and may our bodies lie prostrate before him. Karmabir Brahmyamana Nam Yatra Kwapi Shvarechchaya Mangala Charitar Dhanai Ratir Na Krishna Ishare. Wherever we wander in the material universe, under the influence of karma, by the will of the Lord, may our auspicious activities cause our attraction to Lord Krishna to increase. I like these are from Srimad Bhagavatam. I like these verses for two reasons. One is that their content is so wonderful. May our minds be fixed on Krishna. May we be engaged in his service wherever we wander. And the other reason is because it's spoken by Nanda Maharaj, wherever we may wander by the influence of karma, by the will of the Lord. And of course, he's transcendental to all of these things. So it's very sweet hearing him express his mind in this way. Anyone else, or we can shift to another topic? Nice reviewing these verses that different devotees cherish.
I remember once Bhattacharya was talking about a verse, or I think it's a verse that he chants to himself when he takes a shower. And I don't remember what the verse is, but it always struck me that somebody chants a verse when they're taking a shower. And I'm thinking I need to get in touch with him and find out what it is.
Actually, it's said that someplace in Shastra that while bathing, one should chant mantras.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're sort of wasting our time and we don't get the spiritual benefit, just, the water, that's it. Yes, Apurva and Kamalini. And you need to, there you are.
You go. Have a seat. Have a seat.
I'm still very incomplete with, I think maybe 4 weeks ago, we had a session, or maybe 5, where we were discussing about when one falls down and then whether or not he should be accepted in the assembly of devotees. I don't know the exact wordage, but I think you know and you remember the drift of it. You promised we were going to talk about it the next Thursday, and then somebody butted in before I could say anything. But anyway, I'm not attached, but I am incomplete with the whole thing.
Apichet Suduracharo Bhajate Mam Ananyapak.
Yeah, that's it.
Sadhureva Samantavya Samyag Vyavasito Hisaha. There's a sort of a tension there between what might be common public opinion and what Krishna's opinion is. and that's expressed in the commentary by, I guess it's Baladev or Vishwanath, where he presents all these objections, but he's done this, but he's done that, but he's done this, but he's done that. And Krishna becomes, in this dialogue that the Acharya sketches out, Krishna actually becomes angry and says, he has to be considered saintly. And you should declare that you should, like take a drum and go out and beat the drum and declare this, that my devotee is never vanquished, he's always saintly. So that's Krishna's opinion. That's Krishna's opinion. Bhajate Mam, if he's seriously engaged in devotional service, ananyapak, without any other purpose. Sadhur Eva, Prabhupada says the word Eva is emphatic. He must be considered saintly person. The world has its opinion, but Krishna has his opinion. Oh, yes, Tosi Priya.
All right, you had alluded to this pastime briefly, and I went and reacquainted myself with it. And the name of the devotee has flown from my head, but it's a pastime in Chaitanya Lila of the devotee who was working for the king and was stealing from the king, and then he was going to be executed. And you had brought it up, and I got a lot of insight from that pastime, because this devotee was going to be executed, and the devotees go running to Mahaprabhu, and he's like, don't bother me with this. If he's stealing from the king, that's his problem, and I don't know. I mean, you would be able to speak more broadly on it, but I read, like, as Akura Prabhu was saying, this was a few weeks ago, and I read it, and it was very helpful for me, because to me, it was like the sort of the Vaishnava version of render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and render unto God what is God. That Krishna may choose to protect us, but it's to be understood that we're already protected by him, regardless of what happens to us in the material world. But he's, it seemed that Lord Chaitanya was making it very clear that he was not going to interfere directly in the natural course of things, or he wasn't going to take that position openly, even though we know that it's his mercy that the devotee was saved from being executed. But the message to me seemed that just simply by being a devotee, whatever happens to you, you're getting Krishna's mercy. But it was just very interesting. I would love it if you could speak more on it. What is the name of that devotee? I can't think of it. Gopinath Patanayaka, yeah.
Gopinath Patanayak, yes.
Yeah.
There's, in the purport, I believe, it's mentioned that one of the, I think it's from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that there are multiple lessons to be learned from this. And one of them is that a devotee should be law-abiding, that he should be, honest, as according to, the usual standard of honesty. And so that point is brought up. I believe if somebody has quick access to the purport, like Prabin, for example, then we can see what's there. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu basically wanted his devotees to be law-abiding. That seemed to, as you say, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and unto the tax collector of the Nawab, or whoever it was, what belongs to him. But then the other side of the instruction is how he was glorified, how Gopinath Patanayaka was saved, and how everything went his way. The king increased his standing on account of his being a devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So both things were there. A hand is up at Purva and Kamalini. You have something you wanted to contributors. That's and from before. Okay, we're not.
Say something.
Thank you. I'm getting better. I got your basic drift. Very satisfied with it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Of course, it's there in Prabhupada's purport to the next verse, Kshipram Bhavati Dharmatma, that one shouldn't continue with sinful activities, taking advantage of this verse. But still the point holds that the Lord says he must be considered saintly. Quite radical.
There's a little story. There's a little story that when Prabhupada was in Gainesville, he cleaning, and he had a program at the university, and he was driven to a place so that the walk to the building where the program was would be minimized. And there was a sign on the grass that said, "Don't walk on the grass." And the devotee said, Prabhupada, if you just walk over there, right there, the building is right there. Prabhupada said, "I can't go here. There's a sign that says, 'Do not walk on the grass.'" So he wouldn't walk on the grass.
Nice. There's that parallel story that with Rupanuga Prabhu, where the devotees were in an airport and everybody's crowding whichever area it was, and the airport authorities said we had to leave that area. And so Rupanuga Prabhu, I think, got on a chair and said, "All the devotees have to leave this area immediately." And Prabhupada got up. Not usually, Prabhupada. No.
I remember that.
I think actually Prabhupada asked him, "Am I not a devotee?"
Yeah, right. Hey, Krishna.
I had another favorite verse. I don't know if we're still doing that.
Why not?
Okay. This one's from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's the second verse in the Antyalila. And it goes, Durgame Patinandasya Skala Tarakajir Muhu Sakripayasti Danena Santa Alambanam. And the translation is, "My path is very difficult. I am blind, and my feet are slipping again and again. Therefore, may the saints grant me the stick of their mercy as my support."
So nice. This is the business of Krishna consciousness, to taste these different verses from Shastra and appreciate them. It's an important verse. And yeah, thank you.
Maharaj,
Yes.
I think I found the purport that you were talking about from the pastime of Gopinath Padanayaka.
Tell me.
And they quote the Apichetsu Durataro verse. Even if one commits the most abominable, okay, I'll just start it from the beginning. The Supreme Personality of Godhead will certainly protect a devotee who does something sinful accidentally. As the Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita 9:30-31, I'm not going to read through that all now. If one commits the most abominable actions, if he's engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. He quickly becomes righteous and attains lasting peace. O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. However, if a devotee or so-called devotee purposefully commits sinful activities continually in the hope that Krishna will give him protection, Krishna will not protect him. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Kaliki Rakibe Yadina Dibe Rajadhana. Jagannath has saved Gopinath Padanayaka from being killed by the king today. But if he commits the same offense again, who will give him protection? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu thus warns all foolish devotees that Jagannath will not protect them if they continue to commit offenses. Not sure if that's what you were talking about, but
It's not, but it's certainly relevant and helpful. Now that I think of it, it might be in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's his life and precepts. There's sort of a wrap up by Bhaktivinoda Thakur where he says that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught this by this incident and that by that incident. It might be there.
Got
It's
it.
someplace. It's someplace. Such as memory in Kali Yuga. Everything is someplace. Krishna, Krishna. And what else might be bubbling up tonight in the way of verses or topics or what have you?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Meena.
Fools rush in where angels fear to tread. When we were reading in Bhagavatam just recently about how the Jiva soul is the internal energy, a special form of the internal energy. I guess I've known that for, I've heard it like how many zillions of times, but for some reason, when it went in this time, I got angry. I got very angry. I've been working on it now, and my anger and frustration is, it's a why question. Like, why does Krishna or God create something vulnerable like me? I mean, so it's pertinent, Why? There are other small jivas who aren't susceptible to being influenced by his external energy. So, why do I have to be one of the ones that's susceptible? What is it about me or that class of living entities that makes us like that? We have this Purusha complex. Why do we have that? When we're internal energy, we're servants. So I've been working on that, and it's taken me a lot of very interesting places. And it's kind of a funny one to spring on anyone. But if anyone can deal with it, I'm sure this group can, especially led by you. But the anger was very real. I was very, very angry. Why am I created vulnerable? Why? Why do I have to be exposed to the external energy and go through so many things? Why? It was a real why.
It's certainly a deep topic. Well, one thing to begin with is that all the jivas or all the living entities are in principle vulnerable. It's not just the conditioned souls, but the whole class of living beings. This was an early question that I had when I was in 26 Second Avenue, I think. Are the conditioned souls marginal? Is it so that in the material world we're marginal, and then when we're liberated, we're no longer marginal? And Srila Prabhupada clarified that no, we're always marginal. So even the liberated jivas in the liberated living entities in the spiritual world are still the marginal potency, which means that they have, as Prabhupada put it, a fall down propensity or fall down capability. They're as vulnerable as we are, but because they use their independence properly, they don't fall down. Prabhupada gave the example. He said that I'm a sannyasi, so I can have sex. I have the capability, but I don't by choice, by decision. So our brahmacharis, our sannyasis, they could, in principle, have sex, or any chaste person could, in principle, have sex, but they decide, no, I'm not going to do that. So it's a question of free choice. And the ever liberated living entities are the ones who never choose to exercise independence. And the rest of us, the small number actually, are those who do. The one thought, why do we have this vulnerable position? Why do we have this sort of burden of independence? Has to do with our nature, that we're not exactly created, but we're, as Prabhupada says, part and parcel of Krishna. And Krishna has independence. Abhigya Swarat, he's completely independent. And because we're part of Krishna, we have independence. Yes, Lakshmi Moni. You have to unmute.
The thought that Prabhupada often said, and I've heard many times, that if we didn't have independence, then loving would not be possible. Because love requires a voluntary decision to become the servant or become submissive to somebody else, which implies that we can choose not to somebody. So therefore, the independence is inherent in the jiva, and it's essential part of his characteristic, because otherwise he wouldn't be able to really love Krishna. It would just be like automatic. We would be programmed to love Krishna, but that kind of love is not really genuine. I can't hear you, you're muted.
Now I'm muted. Yes, Prabhupada made that point, that this love requires freedom, as you said. As you said. Yes, Tulsi Priya.
Isn't it also on a number of occasions, Prabhupada says that everything is ultimately spiritual. So isn't it really a case that our desire to enjoy separately from Krishna is what creates the material energy? In other words, that it's a material consciousness that turns us away from Krishna, and that's automatically material consciousness. He uses the example, you have your hand in the sun, the top side is exposed to the sun, you turn it away, and then that side is in darkness. So it's our choice that, I don't mean this literally, but it creates the material consciousness, the material atmosphere, because it wants to be separate from Krishna.
Yeah, Prabhupada makes that point, that it's our consciousness that creates Vrindavan, or it's our consciousness that creates the material world. Sometimes Prabhupada even says, even now we're in the spiritual world, only material consciousness is blocking that perception.
There's something in the chat, Maharaj. There's a question.
Oh, okay. Let me scroll it or expand it or do something so I can read it. Leadership positions seem so demanding, and it seems one has to be powerful spiritually and materially to deal with fire involved in these positions. So how can leaders, managers, teachers deal with various challenges like misunderstanding despite good intentions, etc.? If possible, could you give an instance from your life when such a turning point came and how you moved on? Well, the example that first came to my mind wasn't my life, but it was Brahma's life, because he really asks this question, how to how am I going to do this duty and not become proud? In the second canto that comes, and it appears elsewhere also, that I have to deal with these demonic living entities. I have to create so much. And how do I not become proud or contaminated by all of this? And Krishna assures him that, no, you just do it and you'll be protected. You do it and you'll be protected. Something from my life where one has to be fire and to deal with fire involved in these positions. My life may not be the best example. It may not be the best example. How I rose to some great challenge. Nothing comes to mind, to tell you the truth.
But while something's coming to your mind, Maharaj, something occurred to me from the life of Ravindra Swarup, who speaks on this very topic. He was in conversation with Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was speaking to him and I think Balavanta Prabhu about the political party that was active at the time, the In God We Trust party. And Prabhupada was talking about the future of the world. And Ravindra Swarup Prabhu asked Prabhupada, so Prabhupada, you envision a time when the devotees will be so powerful that they will be managing governments and leading armies? And Prabhupada said, yes. And so Ravindra Swarup Prabhu asked him, so how can we be sure that at that time, that if we're handling so much of the material energy, that we won't ourselves become demons? And he said, Prabhupada shot right back, chant 16 rounds and follow 4 regulative principles. And Ravindra Swarup Prabhu asked him, and that's enough? Prabhupada said, that's enough.
Yeah, I remember that Ravindra Swarup Prabhu saying that several times. Quite powerful. We have these vows to follow, and they're powerful. Follow these 4 rules, chant 16 rounds, and we'll be on the safe side. Prabhupada he said, I guarantee that you'll go back to Godhead. He said that. Such a powerful thing. But that could be really high quality chanting, Venkatesh said. Yes, we should, but Srila Prabhupada appeared to be saying, follow this vow. We'll talk to quality later, but just do this. Follow these 4 rules strictly and chant 16 rounds strictly, and you'll be all right. Of course, doesn't mean offensively, but Srila Prabhupada seemed to be saying that if you do this seriously, and Krishna will help you, you'll be on the safe side. But your point is well taken, that we should chant with quality and not assume that we're on the safe side because we're answering our email and chanting 16 rounds at the same time. It's so important to chant with attention. Then Krishna is present, and if Krishna is present, then we're safe. Yeah. Well, we have 7 minutes. Does someone have more? I was just curious to know if Meena feels satisfied by what has been discussed so far. No, she doesn't feel satisfied. She's still angry. Yes. it's of course, that's a natural response. It's not my fault, it's Krishna's fault.
Yeah. Like I said, I've been working on this a while. It's taking me some unusual places, and that was one of them. Like, you created me like this, I didn't do this. It's one thing I came up with that well, okay, maybe I'll wait and see Tulsi Priya has something.
Well, no, go ahead and finish, but I wanted to answer what you were saying just before, but please finish what you were saying.
Well, the way I've gotten relief from this whole dilemma, which has really been quite consuming for the last week or so, is that it's about unconditional love. That's what I was getting out of this, is that usually, like especially with the Christian culture, God is seen, he loves everyone unconditionally. Well, this is like the chance for the Jiva soul to love Krishna unconditionally. And then I was looking at the prayers of the great devotees, and they're always praying, no matter what situation I'm in, what in life. And then, of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, also life after life. So I was seeing it's not just about, loving God, it's about unconditional love, no matter what situation. And so I've been getting a little relief by thinking like that. So I'm not so angry at him anymore.
Nice. Nice.
Thank you for letting me share that. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Meena. It's so crucial a point. Crucial an issue, crucial a point. Thank you. Well, Praveen's asked a question with 4 minutes to go. Sometimes in conflicting decisions with other devotees, thinking that my decision will help the mission, where to draw the line to pursue our decision or let go of my plan and let the plan of the other devotee prevail. Yeah. That takes some, on one side, humility, on the other side, experience, so that humility doesn't lead to foolishness. Because other devotees can have really bad ideas. It's not just that. And of course, I also can have really bad ideas. So one has to be thoughtful, mature, experience counts, serious, chanting seriously, following seriously, so that Krishna can reveal these things. And there is a sense also that in the community of devotees, we can come to a higher understanding that everyone can benefit by looking at a question from different sides, not just advocating for our own positions, but being willing to hear from others and being willing to consider whether those devotees have something that would help me understand better, that would broaden my understanding. So there's something to be said for that kind of humility and what should we say? There's a word. Anyway, like with old age, if I ever had a vocabulary, it diminishes by the day. But anyway, cooperative or combined or community or group understanding. The understanding that what might come out of the group would surpass any one individual's grasp of the thing. But of course, that's an ideal, and sometimes we need to make a decision. Well, I hope that helps, and let's hear at the very end Kendra's discovery of the verse that Badahari Prabhu chants in the shower.
This is Srimad Bhagavatam 6.2.14. Sanketyam parihasyam va stobhang helanameva va vaikuntanama grahanam asheshagaharang viduhu. One who chants the holy name of the Lord is immediately freed from the reactions of unlimited sins, even if he chants indirectly to indicate something else, jokingly for musical entertainment, or even neglectfully. This is accepted by all the learned scholars of the scriptures. There's no purport to that.
Thank you so much. Should we end with some chanting?
If Panchatattva Prabhu is willing.
Is Panchatattva Prabhu still on the call?
Yeah.
Sure.
No, he's not.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, go
No,
ahead.
no cartoons. It would be
You
too
just need to
crazy.
be used to doing the last kirtan, Prabhu, that's all.
Hmm. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Or Premanande.
Hare Krishna.
Thank
have
you
to-
so much, Panchatattva Prabhu.
Jai. Thank you, Maharaj.
And thank you to all.
The last, I wanted to read a message that came up on the chat from Venkatesh, if that's all right, just to sign off.
Sure.
He says, Lord Chaitanya's mercy has brought me to Sridham Mayapur now for service of school teaching, seeking prayers and blessings from all devotees so that I do these services nicely. Thank you very much, your servant Venkatesh.
Hari Hari Bol.
Hi, Venkatesh Prabhu. Haribo, Haribo.
Hari.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you all. Hare Krishna.